Today we're reviewing Novaia's 2016 DOC Valpolicella Classico Superiore that they call I Cantoni. Novaia'a is a historic winery in the northernmost central part of the Valpolicella Classico region, and currently it's run by young Marcello Vaona and his cousin Cristina. These two young entrepreneurs have taken the reins recently from their fathers, the Vaona brothers Giampaolo and Cesare, and the winery is an organic farm, and they produce roughly 4,000 cases of wine annually, so a relatively small farm. The Valpolicella Classico Superiore DOC has many regulations, like many of the DOC wines in Italy, but this one has some flexibility. And because of this flexibility, the Vaona family's I Cantoni wine is made like and tastes more like a baby Amarone instead of the classic Valpolicella, which can sometimes be quite light. The wine is produced from the classic grapes, the Corvina, the Corvinonna, the Rondinella, but before fermentation, the grapes are actually dried out, much like you do with an Amarone. However, instead of 120 days of drying, which you do for the Amarone, the grapes are dried roughly a month or so about a third of the time. But the result is a really nice, rich, concentrated wine, but without the high alcohol levels that you can sometimes get with the Amarones or without any of the residual sugars. So that's it. Let's jump right into the tasting. Okay, so this wine has a deep ruby to garnet color, and there's some viscosity to this wine as well. So let's jump into the tasting. Okay, we are back, and we are tasting today. This is the Valpolicella Classico Superiore, and the producer is Novaia'a, and this is a wine that they call I Cantoni, and it's actually their 2016 vintage. And just to show you guys the label, this is the wine. And the Valpolicella, like a lot of the wines up in that area, can sometimes be a little bit lighter, but with the Valpolicella Superior, this wine is often produced the way almost an Amarone is. They dry out the grapes just a little bit, so it has a little richness, a little bit more power. But the wines up there don't have a lot of tannins. The grapes they use, the Corvina, the Rondinella, they're not grapes that have a lot of tannic structure. So real easy drinking wines and wines that pair with a lot of different stuff. So let's jump into the tasting and see if that's actually the case with this one. So right off the bat, on the nose, we'll see what's going on. So with this one, subtle red berry fruits. There's a lot of spice on the nose, but again, it's subtle and it's soft spice. Nothing standing out, nothing screaming vanilla or chocolate or any of those sorts of aromas that you might get from too much oak. It has this really harmonious kind of aroma, but very subtle, seemingly complex, but subtle and interesting and elegant. So let's jump into the tasting and see what's going on. So very smooth, it doesn't have the rich, aggressive tannins that we're used to seeing in, say, some of the Sangiovese or maybe even some of the Nebbiolo wines that we've talked about for this particular offer. But it does have an incredible freshness. Novaia'a is up a little bit higher elevation, so their grapes do maintain this beautiful freshness regardless of the fact that they're drying them out and stuff. And even though they do dry them out, the wine only has about 14% alcohol, which is not that high. A lot of the Tuscan Sangioveses will have that without even drying any of the fruit. The wine does come across a little bit more complex on the palate. You get a little bit more notes of some more of the spice. The spice is still soft in some respects, but you also get this kind of peppery note that's in there. The fruit's a little bit more clearly defined on there. But really, really nice wine. But what dominates is this freshness. This is still a wine that needs to be paired with food, but it's a little bit easier to pair, a little bit more versatile to pair than, say, some of the other wines, especially some of the Nebbiolo-based wines that are real rich, real heavy. This is a wine that you can just kind of do charcuterie plates, cheese and salamis and prosciuttos and stuff like that. Or if you guys are familiar with Bresaola, the way they do it up in northern Italy, that we'll also do here in Tuscany, but it's kind of a northern Italian dish. It's this kind of dried out beef tenderloin, effectively, that very, very lean salami, and they slice it real thin, and they'll put some arugula and Parmesan cheese shavings and then douse it with olive oil. Something like that's a classic pair with this, especially with a lot of the olive oil, because that kind of fights this acidity or balances it out. But whole host of things that you can pair this with. Lots of pasta dishes up in northern Italy. This one comes from the region around Verona. Horses on the menu, and the way they prepare that up there, sometimes it can be a little bit fatty. So this pairs really nicely with those types of dishes. Probably a little less typical in other parts of the world, but in any case. Really, really versatile wine, and a wine that I think is just a nice break every once in a while if you want something a little bit easier drinking. You know, you don't want something so heavy and tannicky and stuff like that on your palate. This wine is just a nice break from that. It's something new, something a little bit unique, and really enjoy this wine, which is why I have selected it for you guys. Hope you guys enjoy it too, and salute.